Hello everyone, welcome back to GraveTales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. I want you to leave a comment on where in the world you're tuning in from, and if you're enjoying the story, be sure to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get into tonight's stories. Story 1. It started the way most bad ideas do, sometime around 2 in the morning. Too tired to sleep, too wired to stop scrolling. I'd fallen into a weird corner of YouTube that night. You know the type, grainy dashcam crashes from Russia, retro public access shows with creepy mascots, vintage PSAs warning kids about lawnmower accidents. I wasn't searching for anything in particular. The algorithm had taken the wheel hours ago. The video that started it all wasn't one I clicked on. It just played. I had nodded off for a second when the thumbnail popped up. Just a black screen with red text that read, Confession 37. She wouldn't stop screaming. It was the title that woke me up. There was something about the way it was phrased. Cold, unapologetic. I rubbed my eyes, expecting some edgy horror roleplay or one of those fake killer confession ASMR things. Instead, what I got was a video, time-stamped March 3rd, 2020, filmed in what looked like a dark, unfinished basement. There was just one subject. A man, or maybe a woman, it was hard to tell. They wore a thick, grey hoodie with the hood up and a black ski mask underneath. No logos, no distinguishing features. The kind of outfit that erases a person. They were sitting at a wooden table. No props, no blood, no background music. Just the dull hum of a fan or maybe a space heater in the distance. Then they started to speak, calm, rhythmic, almost like reading a grocery list. Her name was Lydia. I don't know if she had a last name. Not really important. She was the kind that walks home from work too late, checks her reflection in store windows, always thinks someone's following her. She was right. I sat up straighter. The audio was bad, but not unlistenable, muffled, like it was recorded through a VHS camcorder or an old phone. It didn't seem staged. No spooky filter, no jump cuts, just the killer. Because that's what this person was recounting, a murder. He spoke in detail. What she wore, how she fought, what sound she made when he pressed his fingers into her windpipe, and all the while, he never looked at the camera. It was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever watched. I don't know why I didn't pause it. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe it was the hypnotic way he spoke, like he'd done this dozens of times before, but I watched the entire thing. 11 minutes and 54 seconds, and just before the video cut to black, the figure finally looked into the lens and said, "Next stop, Ashton Grove." I remember the way my stomach dropped when I heard that. Ashton Grove is my hometown. A quiet, forgettable patch of suburbia in the Midwest. It's not a place that gets mentioned in horror videos, or any videos. Hell, the Wikipedia article about it only has 2 paragraphs. At first, I assumed it was a coincidence, a generic small-town name. But the way he said it, my Ashton Grove, gave me chills. It wasn't just that he said the name, it was that he knew it would mean something to whoever was watching. I clicked on the channel. No banner, no profile picture, no about section, just 48 videos, each one titled the same way. Confession 1. The mailbox was already open. Confession 12. I waited for the bus with her. Confession 22. The dog knew first, each with a black thumbnail and red text, each between 5 to 20 minutes long. Each ending, I would later learn, with a location, my hands were sweaty on the trackpad. I looked at the published dates. They went back over a decade, spaced irregularly. The first upload was dated 2009, but the channel had only been active since last year. The earlier videos were backdated, probably uploaded in bulk. Something felt ... wrong. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. I clicked on another. Confession 14. The drain wasn't big enough. Same setup, same voice, same pacing. In this one, the killer described stalking a woman through a grocery store, tailing her to her apartment, and strangling her in the bathtub. He spent 3 minutes talking about the sound her skull made hitting the porcelain, then calmly detailed how he tried to dissolve her body with store-bought chemicals, and how it clogged the drain. He ended it the same way. Next stop, Green Falls. That's not where I live, but it's only about 40 minutes away. A town I've driven through. It's local. I paused the video and searched for Green Falls plus murder plus bathtub. Sure enough, there was a case from 2016. Unsolved. Woman, early 30s, found partially dissolved in her apartment's bathtub. Suspect never identified. I stared at my screen for a long time after that. Either someone had gone to an extreme level of detail to fake this, or I had just watched a literal snuff confession video and no one seemed to care. The comments were turned off. Likes and views were hidden. I tried sharing the link with my friend Eric. He called me 2 minutes later and said the video was unavailable. That's when it hit me. I wasn't supposed to find this, or maybe, and this thought terrified me more than anything else. Maybe I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't just the video. It was the silence afterward, the stillness in my apartment, the glow from the monitor, the way every small sound, a car passing outside, the fridge humming to life. Even the ticking of the clock on my bookshelf felt amplified, like something was listening back. I sat there, the words "next stop," Ashton Grove repeating over and over in my head like a curse. Around 3:40 a.m., I forced myself back to the channel. I don't know why. Curiosity, fear, some sick part of me wanted to believe I'd imagined it, that the whole thing was a dream I hadn't fully woken up from. But the videos were still there. All 48 of them. No channel name, no social links, no watermark, no monetization. Just a graveyard of titles. And when I hovered my mouse over the most recent video, the one that mentioned my town, I noticed something I hadn't before. The description box wasn't empty. It had one line, a set of GPS coordinates, 40.6, 24889, 83.013041. I stared at the numbers for a long time. They didn't mean anything to me, not at a glance, but something about them chilled me. Like finding a number written on your bedroom mirror that you didn't write yourself. I copied and pasted them into Google Maps. The pin dropped just outside a state park I used to visit when I was younger. Maple Ridge Reserve, just north of Ashton Grove, about a 30-minute drive if you took County Road 6 all the way up. The location wasn't a landmark or a campsite. It was off-trail, deep into the woods. No road led directly to it. I remembered going to Maple Ridge once on a middle school field trip. The teachers took us on a nature walk. There were birds, streams, and one lookout point with a view of the ravine. I remembered that part because it gave me vertigo. I never went back. I zoomed in on the coordinates. Nothing visible. Just trees and more trees. But someone had tagged the spot with a user-submitted photo. I clicked on it. It was blurry, taken at dusk. Looked like it was shot on a flip phone or a very early smartphone. The image showed a shallow depression in the dirt, partially overgrown with weeds. There was something poking out of the ground. At first glance, it looked like a branch, but on closer inspection, it was too smooth. A bone. I backed away from the screen. That couldn't be real. I clicked through a few more videos. Not watching them, not yet, just checking the descriptions. Confession 12 had coordinates, pointing to a rest stop off Highway 53. Confession 29 had ones leading to an abandoned barn upstate. Confession 8 had none. Just the words, "Don't dig where it rains." Every video had a location tied to it, one way or another. I started copying the coordinates into a spreadsheet. I couldn't help myself. Something about the sheer volume of them, the casual way they were dropped beneath horrific, whispered monologues. It didn't feel like fiction anymore. It felt like a ledger, like evidence. I looked up the location tied to Confession 14, the bathtub one. The coordinates were for a small apartment complex in Green Falls. Cross-referencing the address, I found a real news article from 2016. Woman's remains found in bathtub. Police suspect homicide. I clicked through the article. No suspects. No arrests. She was found by a maintenance worker who'd been called due to water damage in the unit below. The tenant, a woman named Jennifer Halbrook, had been missing for over a week. Neighbors complained of a smell. By the time they found her, it was already too late. The article said the chemicals had damaged much of the evidence. The killer had poured drain cleaner and bleach into the tub, but the body was too large, the drain too narrow. Police believed the murder was premeditated but had no leads. But the video I watched, it had all the details the article didn't. The sound of her skull hitting the tub, the exact brand of chemicals, the way he described leaving her keys under the rug afterward so the landlord wouldn't suspect anything. Details that weren't public. I searched Reddit, web sleuths, even the Wayback Machine. Nothing. No posts about the channel, no conspiracy threads, no YouTubers covering it, no creepypasta forums breaking it down. Nothing. As if the channel didn't exist in the broader internet. As if I was the only person seeing it, and yet the videos had been uploaded years ago. Some of them even had timestamp watermarks, suggesting they'd been recorded even earlier. Like a digital archive of horror slowly leaking into the present at this point. My rational brain kicked in. Maybe this was a very elaborate art project, a long-term ARG, some obscure found footage series with a tiny fan base. But no, that didn't. Hold up, there were too many specifics, too many real-world matches. And if it was fiction, why go to such lengths and never promote it? No hashtags, no advertising, not even a Patreon link. I stared back at the original video. Confession 37. The man's voice haunted me, calm, smooth, not emotionless. Exactly, more like ... disassociated. Like he'd recited these stories to himself so many times that the horror had worn off. Like he wasn't confessing, he was reliving. The final line echoed in my head again. Next stop, Ashton Grove. I re-watched that part, slowed it down. When he said my town's name, I thought I heard something layered. Beneath it, an echo, maybe. A whisper. I pulled the audio into Audacity and cranked the gain, cleaned the noise. There was something there. Faint, but unmistakable. A second voice. Under his female whispering. I isolated the track as best I could. It sounded like one word repeated 3 times. Help, help, help. My mouth went dry. I took off my headphones and just sat there, staring into the dark window, watching my reflection breathe. Then I looked closer. It wasn't just help. There was more, just before the last whisper cut off, right before. The screen went black dot. I boosted the last half second. This time, it was a name. Help, your name. Not just my first name, my full name. No one knows that name online, not even in my YouTube account. Info, I'm careful. I don't use my last name on anything public. I don't speak it in my videos. It's not searchable. I've made sure of it. And yet, there it was, in a whisper, in a confession video, posted under an anonymous channel with no views. On a video I didn't search for. One that autoplayed at random, unless it didn't. Unless the algorithm didn't stumble. Unless the video wasn't random. Unless it had been uploaded for me. That was when I started to shake, because suddenly it felt like I was no longer just a viewer. I was a character in it, and maybe, just maybe, the killer wasn't done filming. The next morning came like a slap to the face. I hadn't slept. I didn't even try. My body ached from sitting in the same position all night, my back hunched, legs tingling from lack of circulation, eyes dry and burning. But none of that mattered. I couldn't stop thinking about that voice whispering my name. There was a strange kind of sickness in my gut, not like the flu, not food poisoning. No, this was heavier, deeper, like I'd swallowed something, cursed, and now it was spreading. Spent the first hour of daylight pacing my apartment. Curtains still drawn, TV off, phone silent. The world outside was doing what it always did. Kids walking to summer school, garbage trucks making their rounds, someone jogging with a golden retriever, all oblivious to the fact that something dark was bleeding into my life. I tried to go about my day, tried to shower, tried to eat. I couldn't. The channel wouldn't leave me alone. So finally, I did the only thing I could think to do. I called my cousin, Andrew. He's a sheriff's deputy 2 counties over. Not a big shot, but connected. Enough to have access to records and databases the public can't see. We're not super close, but we grew up together. He was the kind of kid who'd play detective while the rest of us played tag. Always a little too serious, always a little too intense. But now, that made him exactly the person I needed. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, you alive?" "I think so," I said. "Listen, I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that comes with coordinates." That got his attention. He was quiet for a second. "Go on," I told him about the channel, vaguely. I said I'd come across a strange video that referenced a missing person. I didn't tell him about the masked figure, or the whispering, or the fact that I hadn't slept in 28 hours. I knew how that would sound. Instead, I just asked him to run a few things quietly. I gave him the coordinates from Confession 14, the one about the woman in the bathtub. I didn't mention the confession part. He didn't say much, just said he'd check it out and get back to me. I waited. The next 3 hours felt like years. I didn't watch any more of the channel during that time. I couldn't bring myself to. Every time I opened the tab, the thumbnails stared back at me like tombstones. Each one a grave with a title. Confession 19. She said it wouldn't hurt anyone. Confession 4. The van didn't smell like gasoline at first. Confession 45. He asked me to stop. They weren't just stories. They were records. And if they were real, that meant someone somewhere, was walking free, carrying dozens of murders like memories in their back pocket. My phone buzzed at 1:08 p.m. It was Andrew. I answered on the first ring. He didn't waste time. Where did you get those coordinates? I swallowed. Why? Because they're real. I sat down. He continued. That addressed the apartment complex in Green Falls. There was a homicide there in 2016. Unsolved, female victim, late 20s, found decomposing in her own bathtub after neighbors complained about the smell. Maintenance guy discovered her when the ceiling collapsed in the unit below. Her name was Jennifer Halbrook, I said softly. He went quiet. How did you know that? I didn't answer. He asked again, slower this time. How did you know? Her name, I found, ... something online, a channel. It has videos. Confession videos. Andrew didn't say anything. The silence on the other end felt suddenly heavy. Like he wasn't just listening, like he was thinking carefully about how to respond. Finally, he spoke again. Is this channel public? It is, but I think it's hidden. I can access it, but my friend tried and couldn't. The links don't work for him. Comments are disassembled. Likes are hidden. It's like it's only visible to me. Another pause. Then, you need to stop watching. I can't. I'm serious. So am I, Andrew sighed. Look, I don't know what this is. Could be a prank, could be a really sick art project, or it could be something worse. But if what you're saying is true, and if this guy really is confessing to real crimes, you need to screen record everything. Names, locations, timestamps. Don't touch anything physically. Don't go to the sites. Just document. And whatever you do, don't engage. I haven't commented or liked anything, I said quickly. Mean more than that, he said. This kind of thing, it's like a virus. The more you interact, the more it grows. I didn't like the way he said that. So what are you going to do? I'm going to call someone, he said. Off the record. Someone in state. Investigations. But if you hear from anyone asking questions, anyone you don't know, call me first. Do you think they'll take it seriously? If you're telling the truth, Andrew said, this is bigger than anything local. And if you're lying, I'm not. He exhaled. Then you might have just stumbled into something you're not supposed to see. After we hung up, I sat staring at my laptop. My hands were shaking, because now it was real. No part of me could rationalize it anymore. These weren't creepypasta stories dressed up in lo-fi edits. This was someone, somewhere, documenting what they'd done, murders, dozens of them, for over a decade, and uploading them, piece by piece, like a twisted anthology. And the worst part, no one else seemed to notice. No outrage, no news articles, no blog posts, no viral Reddit threads, just this quiet drip feed of horror into the void. Unless, of course, I wasn't supposed to find it. I started digging deeper. I picked a random video from early on, Confession 6. She giggled in her sleep. It was older, the camera shakier, the audio worse. The killer sat cross-legged on a motel bed, talking into a handheld camcorder. He described entering a house through the doggy door. Said the girl, she couldn't have been more than 16. Laughed in her sleep when he stood over her. Said that's why he changed his mind about suffocating her. Said he wanted to hear her laugh again. I nearly vomited, but something he said near the end caught my ear. 12 minutes from Willow. Run, left turn at the barn with the blue cross on the roof. That wasn't a location, not directly, but it was enough to work with. I googled Willow Run, a real town about 2 hours away. Tiny, 1 grocery store, 2 churches, and an annual tomato festival. Then I looked for images of barns nearby. It didn't take long. There it was. A real barn. Weathered grey, sitting alone on a dirt lot off Route 17, with a blue-painted cross on the roof. It had been posted on someone's travel blog in 2015, captioned, "Weird barn off the back road to nowhere." And suddenly I had the scene dot. Suddenly the story clicked into real geography, real murder, real consequence. I went back and watched the ending again, same sign off. Next stop, Ashton Grove. My town, again. But this video was old, dated 2011, long before this year's video, and yet the same closing line. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a pattern, and worse, it was a warning. By that night, I was obsessed. I wish I could say I stepped away from the screen, took a walk, cleared my head, but I didn't. I couldn't. It had become like a hook behind my eyes, pulling me back every time I tried to look away. I told myself I was doing research, that if this channel really was documenting murders, real ones, then maybe I could stop something, help someone, get ahead of it before the next confession dropped. But deep down, I think I already knew the truth. This wasn't about helping anyone. It had become personal. The problem was, no one else could see it. I found that out when I tried to send the channel to my friend Maya. She's a digital artist, smart, skeptical, the kind of person who can tear apart a conspiracy theory in minutes, which is exactly what I needed. I sent her the link to Confession 37 and waited. She responded almost instantly. Weird link dead. Says video unavailable. Blinked. I refreshed the page. The video played fine for me. Still there. Still whispering. Still ending with Ashton Grove. I sent her a screenshot of the video player. She sent back one word. How? I told her to try searching the channel name manually. Except, and I hadn't realized this until then, there wasn't a channel name, just a blank username. No profile icon, no upload count. Even the page's background was black. It was like the channel was a ghost. I checked the URL and copied it exactly. Sent it again, same result. Video unavailable. Then I tried logging out of my account and visiting the channel as a guest gone dot. It didn't exist anymore. But when I logged back in, it was there again, clear as day. All 48 videos, right where I left them. Same thumbnails, same titles, same cold, dead air. I sent the link to 3 more people. A former co-worker, my old roommate, even my mum. All of them got the same message. This video is unavailable. That's when the sickest thought hit me. What if the channel was only visible to one person at a time? What if it picked viewers? What if it picked me? That would explain the targeted phrases, the local names, the whispered voice saying my full name, even the next stop, Ashton Grove line. It wasn't a clue. It wasn't even a sign-off. It was a statement of intent. I was the next confession. I tried downloading the video directly. No dice. YouTube blocked every attempt. The links were like wet paper. They looked solid, but crumbled the second you tried to grab hold. So I did what Andrew told me. I screen recorded. I opened Confession 12, recorded the entire thing, then backed it up on 2 external drives and a cloud folder under a random file name. I didn't want to say anything incriminating in the file name. I didn't want it flagged, or worse, deleted. I recorded 3 more videos, labeled them Document 1, Document 2, etc. Each one was worse than the last. Confession 17 was about a hitchhiker a young man picked up on the side of the road during a thunderstorm. The killer talked about how the kid kept trying to make conversation, said he was heading to see his girlfriend, said his name was Chris, said he had a birthmark on his left temple. Halfway through the confession, the camera angle changed. It showed the kid slumped in the passenger seat, lifeless, mouth open, soaked from rain. A prop, not a dummy. His body was too real to limp. I paused the video, zoomed in, and noticed something chilling. He had a sticker on his backpack. It was a logo for Kingdom Coffee, a local indie cafe about 10 minutes from my apartment. I've been there more than once. This killer, whoever they were, had passed through here before. Maybe they never left. Later that night, I did something stupid. I posted anonymously on Reddit. On a true crime forum I used to lurk. I wrote, found a strange YouTube channel, might be linked to real crimes. Confession-style videos, super low views, no comments. But details seem to match actual unsolved cases. Anyone else seen this? I kept it vague. No links, no identifying info. The post got 3 upvotes, 1 comment, probably a promo stunt, ARG or something. I refreshed. The post was gone, deleted. No message from mods, no account warning, just gone. I tried reposting under a different phrasing, gone again. Then a DM popped up. Deleted. Stop posting about the channel. You're not the first person it chose. I froze, clicked the profile, already removed. No karma, no post history. Like it had never existed. I stared at the message for a long time. The phrasing, the first person it chose, implied something horrifying. Not that I had discovered the channel, but that the channel had discovered me. That message haunted me. It was too specific to be random. I started noticing strange things around the apartment. My mouse moved slightly when I left the room. The timestamp on my Wi-Fi router reset once, as if someone had accessed the admin panel. I started covering my webcam with tape. Put my phone in the microwave at night. I know how that sounds. Paranoid, ridiculous. But when you start hearing your name whispered in videos that don't exist for anyone else, paranoia becomes survival. And then the weirdest thing happened. I got a notification from YouTube. Your comment has been hearted by the creator. Except I hadn't left a comment. I clicked the notification and was taken to a video I'd never seen before. Confession 49, the one who watches. It was uploaded 3 minutes ago. I opened it. The screen was black for several seconds. Then, slowly, it faded into a blurry, handheld shot, a dashcam feed. The vehicle was parked on a quiet residential street, my street. I recognized the address numbers on the mailbox, the crack in the sidewalk, the maple tree that leans slightly toward curb. The camera sat there for a full minute, unmoving. Then the voice began. I've been watching you longer than you think. I couldn't breathe. You came close to seeing once, when you were 10. The bones in the woods behind 8th Street. You should have told someone, but you didn't, and I knew you were mine. My ears started ringing. I was 10 years old when I found something in those woods. A pile of bones, small ones. I thought it was a deer or maybe a dog. I told my mum. She said they were animal remains and told me not to play back there again. I never thought about it again until now. The camera panned slightly to the left. There, in the reflection of a window across the street, my window, I saw a faint, shimmering silhouette, like someone holding a camera, watching me. Then the screen went dark. One final message. Next stop, you. I didn't open the video right away. Confession 49. The one who watches had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. That moment where the camera slowly panned to show my window, not just any window, my window had carved a hole into my stomach. I could feel it there, a pulsing cold spot, like a second heart. I had called Andrew right after, panicked and pacing, holding the phone so tightly I nearly cracked the screen. He told me to calm down, that maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was stock footage. I could tell, even as he said it, he didn't believe himself. That night, I didn't sleep. The camera stayed pointed at my door in my mind, watching, waiting. The next morning, I got up, made coffee I didn't drink, and sat down in front of the screen again. Confession 13 had been next on my list. I don't know why I skipped it before. Maybe the title didn't jump out at me the first time, but now, with the new context, it meant something. The title was simple, Confession 13, the music teacher at first. I figured it would be like the others, detached, graphic, distant. But what I didn't expect was recognition. I hit play. The video began like all the others. No music, no logos, no theatrics, just the hooded figure sitting at a desk in a dim room, this time illuminated by the faint flicker of an overhead light. He leaned forward. She wore a brooch on her lapel every Tuesday, one of those old-fashioned gold ones, a treble clef with little pearls. Not real, just cheap costume jewelry, but she thought it made her look like she belonged in a concert hall instead of a public school. He chuckled softly. She'd close her eyes when she played the piano, like the keys were telling her secrets. My blood turned to ice. I knew who he was talking about, Mrs. Delaney. She'd been my music teacher in 6th grade, taught out of the tiny room at the end of the east hallway in Ashton Grove Elementary. Her classroom had a dusty upright piano in the corner and old fraying sheet music on every desk. She was quiet, kind, always smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. She had a brooch, a gold treble clef that she pinned to her cardigan every Tuesday. We used to joke that it was her armor, but she disappeared the second semester. The official story was that she moved, transferred to a school in another district, but none of us ever saw her again. No goodbye, no announcement. One day she just wasn't there, and then a substitute came, and then a new permanent teacher, and we all forgot until now. The killer kept talking, his voice slow and steady. I followed her home 3 times before I made my decision. She lived alone, basement apartment. Her windows had curtains with little music notes stitched into the edges. I remembered those. We'd passed her apartment once on a field trip walk. She waved from the porch. The night I did it, she was working on a lesson plan, listening to a cassette, Brahms, I think. She didn't hear me come in, not at first. He paused. I used the piano wire. I thought she'd appreciate the irony. I gagged. He described, in detail, the struggle, how long it took, what she tried to say, how she clawed at his hands. Then, something new, a chilling addition that hadn't shown up in other videos. The camera angle changed. Now, it was angled slightly downward, focused on the surface of the desk, and there, sitting in the center of the frame, was a small, tarnished gold brooch in the shape of a treble clef. one pearl missing. He lifted it with gloved fingers. She wore this every Tuesday. Then he looked into the camera for the first time in the entire video and said, "You remember her, don't you?" I felt like I'd been punched in the lungs. This wasn't coincidence anymore. He wasn't just documenting victims. He was targeting memories. My memories. I dug out my old elementary school yearbooks, buried in a cardboard box, under tax documents and broken computer cables. I flipped through the dusty pages until I found it. The faculty spread. There she was, Mrs. Delaney, smiling, gentle-eyed, standing next to her piano, and then, something I hadn't remembered, a note scribbled in the corner in blue pen. "Thanks for always remembering my Tuesday brooch. Stay curious. Mrs. D. My vision blurred. I didn't remember writing that. I didn't remember much about 6th grade at all. But somehow she remembered me. Enough to leave a note. Enough to sign. Something personal. And now she was dead. Had been for years. And the only proof of what happened to her was buried in a video that no one else could see. I called Andrew again. When I told him about Mrs. Delaney, he went silent. "I think she was one of his victims," I said. "She never moved away. She didn't transfer. She was murdered." "I don't see anything about her in the system," he said. "No death certificate. No missing persons report. Nothing. She was just erased." I whispered. "I'll dig," he said. "But if she wasn't reported, and no body was found, she may not be in any system." I closed my eyes. The killer had said he used piano wire. That would have left marks on the neck. Evidence. But if no one found her, if her apartment was cleaned, if she was buried somewhere, it hit me. The coordinates. I checked the description box of the video. Sure enough, there was another GPS. Location: 40.612.401, 83.004.201. I plugged it in. It was in Ashton Grove, the woods behind the elementary school. A patch of overgrown trees near the old fence line, just past the field we used for fire drills. No one went there. It wasn't part of the playground. Too dense. Too tick-infested. But I remembered sneaking back there once, daring each other to go deeper. We found an old beer can and a snake once. That's all. I stared at the pin on the map. If she was buried there, how many others were? I didn't go there. Not yet. I was too afraid, instead. I watched the video again, and something new jumped out at 9 minutes and 22 seconds. Just as the killer picks up the brooch again, there's a sound in the background, a faint chime. I isolated it, boosted the volume. It was a piano key. Just one note. I ran it through a tuner app, middle C. It wasn't random. It wasn't background noise. He'd played a piano key in the video, deliberately, like a signature, like a calling card, or maybe a message. He knew I'd hear it. That night, I left my lights on. I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment felt like footsteps. Every car headlight through the blinds looked like a camera flash. I kept thinking about that brooch dot, about the music note curtains, the cassette playing Brahms, her quiet smile, and the wire. I started to wonder, had he been in my school? Was he a janitor? A substitute? A parent? He'd known the hallway layout, the piano, her Tuesday routine. He didn't pick her randomly. He had watched, and now he was watching again. I used to think sound was just background noise, something passive. The creak of a chair, the hum of an old fridge, the tap of your fingernails. When you're anxious, harmless, meaningless. I don't think that anymore after watching Confession 13 for the 4th time. I couldn't stop thinking about that one piano key, middle C. It didn't feel accidental. It was deliberate, placed, timed. And once I realized it was there, it opened a door in my head I wish I could close. Because if that sound was intentional, what else was buried in the background of those videos? So I did something I hadn't done before. I downloaded every video I could find from the channel. All 53 confession videos, from Confession 1, the woman in the attic, to Confession 49, the one who watches. The rest had been deleted by the time I got there, gone without a trace. I used a video scraping tool to pull every remaining file down to my laptop. I didn't want to stream anymore. I needed control. And then I started listening, not watching, listening. I used a pair of closed-back studio headphones I still had from a brief podcasting phase I went through in college, and imported each video into Audacity, the free audio editing software. I didn't care about the video anymore. I wanted what lived beneath it, under the voice, beneath the breaths. The first thing I noticed was that the killer's voice was always centered, dead in the middle of the stereo field, like a cold monologue, but faintly, almost inaudibly. There were layers, ambient tones, soft, static, occasionally what sounded like environmental hiss. One isolated a few frequency bands and boosted the EQ, then noise reduced everything else. That's when I heard the first whisper. At exactly 12:14 in Confession 11, the librarian, the killer pauses for 5 seconds. In that gap, there's a whisper. Very faint. It's not him. I replayed it 20, 30 times. Cleaned it. Boosted it. It said, "Are you listening yet?" I yanked the headphones off and nearly threw them across the room. I just sat there, staring at the screen, hands shaking. It wasn't the content that got to me. It was the timing. This wasn't a confession anymore. This was a conversation, and I didn't know how long it had been going on. I made a spreadsheet. Yes, I know how that sounds. But I had to get organized. Every confession had a pattern. Voice front and center. Minor distortion artifacts on the left channel. Room tone buried in the low end. But as I started going through more of them, I realized something even more disturbing. The whispers changed depending on the order I watched the videos. I know, logically, that's impossible. The video file is static. It doesn't adapt. It's not a game or an AI, but I tested it. I watched Confession 21, the driver twice, once right after Confession 11, and once as the first video of the day. In the first instance, I heard the whisper say, "Turn left at the blinking light." In the second, it said, "He's in the back seat." Same video, different message. Both chilling, both impossible. I called Andrew again. "Man, you're gonna think I'm losing it," I said. "But I think the videos are adaptive. Like, they change depending on what order you watch them in." To his credit, Andrew didn't laugh, like some kind of branching narrative. He said, "No, not like a choose-your-own-adventure, like it's watching me, listening, knowing what I watched already, and changing what I hear. That's not how files work." "Yeah, I know." Silence. Then Andrew said, "Are you wearing headphones?" "Yeah, check them." "What do you mean, just check them? Are they plugged directly into the laptop?" I looked. They weren't. I'd been using a USB-C adapter, a cheap one I picked up from a sketchy vendor online after my headphone jack broke. It had this tiny red LED that blinked every few seconds. I never thought anything of it before, but now. I looked up the serial number, Googled the model, tried to find the manufacturer. Nothing. Literally nothing. No listings, no product pages, no Amazon reviews. Just some foreign language tech forums with strings of deleted posts and broken images. I unplugged it, and for a split second, as I pulled the headphones out of the adapter, I heard a voice say my name. I swear to God. I heard it just one word, whispered Matt. I didn't sleep that night. Again, instead, I went back into Audacity, but this time I ran a spectral analysis on the files. It's a visual representation of sound, a way to see audio. You can sometimes catch hidden frequencies or embedded tones that don't show up in standard waveforms. I loaded Confession 30, the man in the crawl space, and there it was, right at the 14-minute mark, a strange block of frequencies that formed a rectangular shape. Not audio, not hiss. A structure. I zoomed in, and my stomach dropped. It was a QR code. I screen captured it, transferred it to my phone, and scanned it. It opened. A private link. A download prompt. I hesitated, but I clicked it. What downloaded was a single .wav file, 13 seconds long. I played it. It was the killer's voice again, this time faster, panicked, whispering fast enough that I had to slow it down 50% to catch the words. They'll never believe you. They're already in the walls. They record everything. They hear you breathing. They hear you sleeping. The audio ended with another faint piano note. F#. Not the same as before, but it meant something. A pattern. I started a log. Confession 13, middle CQR, WAVF. Hash, Confession 30, full, G, minor chord, at 1704, Confession 3, when watched third in order. Dit wasn't random. It was a song being played over multiple confessions, hidden in whispers, tones, chords. Not a melody you could hear directly, but if you assembled the sounds in sequence, it formed something musical, like a signature, or worse, like a ritual. I woke up at 3:47 a.m. to the sound of my laptop turning on by itself. It wasn't plugged in. The lid was closed, but the fans spun up, the screen lit my room, and the confession channel was open in the browser. A video I'd never seen before was playing, no title, just a black screen with white text. He's watching through the glass. It was only 2 minutes long. The screen showed nothing but static at first. Then a slow dissolve into a dark room, lit only by moonlight. A bed, a laptop, a figure hunched over a desk. I leaned in. It was me, wearing the same hoodie I was wearing now. Same laptop, same wall art in the background. Then the camera panned to the window, and I saw him, the killer, standing outside, motionless, staring through the glass. Except it was my window, my exact layout, my exact apartment. I launched to my feet and spun around. Nothing there, no one. But I didn't sleep again that night. Not really, just lay there, eyes open, watching the shadows twitch across my walls as my laptop fan continued to hum, soft and steady, like a breathing thing. The next morning, Andrew texted me. "Dude, you need to stop. Right now. Seriously." I called him. "What's going on?" I asked. He sounded out of breath. Panicked. "I just got a warning from my agency's internal systems. My search history triggered something." "What kind of something?" "A flag. a silent alarm. Not public-facing, the kind of thing that's usually reserved for terrorism or biohazard keywords. But it was about your case. What triggered it? He hesitated. A file name. One of the videos you sent me. The one with the QR code. What about it? There's a hash inside that matches a classified document. Something about a program called Searglass. Searglass. Yeah. I don't know what it means, but that's what the backend named it. I tried to access the report and got locked out of the server. Andrew, you need to stop watching those videos. Whatever this is, it's not just a killer, it's something worse. Later that day, I plugged in the QR audio into a MIDI mapping tool, tried to generate sheet music from the tones I'd collected so far. What came out wasn't a full song, but it was enough to recognize the melody. It was Far Elise by Beethoven, but wrong dot, out of tune, reordered, missing notes, a broken version, a reversed version. That same song played in the background of Confession 13, when Mrs. Delaney was killed. The cassette, the music, playing in her apartment. He had been building a mirror version of it, hidden in pieces, scattered across dozens of confessions. He wasn't just leaving clues, he was rebuilding moments, sound by sound, note by note, memory by memory. And then I got a notification. The YouTube channel had uploaded a new video, the first new one in weeks. No title, just a thumbnail of my face. I hadn't sent anyone photos. My social media accounts were locked down. My webcam was covered. My image wasn't public anywhere. But there I was, frozen in the thumbnail, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like I'd been caught mid-sentence. I clicked on it, and the screen stayed black for several seconds. Then a voice whispered, "You heard the song, now remember the scream." I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing until I heard the gasp claw its way out of my throat. That image, my own face on the thumbnail, had shattered something in me. I sat, frozen, hands still hovering over the mouse, staring at the black screen where the video had just whispered, "You heard the song. Now remember the scream." There was no scream in the video, not yet, but I felt it, somewhere behind my ears, behind my thoughts. Something was winding up like a slow-turned crank, something old, something waiting to be remembered. I clicked play again. The video didn't show anything new, just darkness. No visuals, no narration, only that whispered line, and then a tone. A single, long tone, like a sustained violin note dragging across an endless string. But when I checked the audio file's properties, something caught my eye. It was encoded with a metadata tag I'd never seen before. Program, Searglass. Origin key, 9 decalstrom. I copy-pasted that line into my browser. Nothing came up. Not at first. But I remembered what Andrew had said, how the system flagged it, how he'd been locked out for trying to read more. So I tried something dumber. I uploaded the audio file to a dead darknet forum. I used to scrape ARGs years ago. It was mostly abandoned now, full of broken images and ghost accounts. But sometimes, when you posted something truly strange, the lurkers would wake up. I titled the post, "Searglass. Does anyone recognize this audio tag?" and hit upload. Then I waited at 2:11 a.m. A message popped into my inbox from a user named AG_Silo. No profile picture, no post history, just a DM that said, "Where did you get this? Don't post this again. Delete it. And if you've watched any of the videos, Do not listen backward. Then a second message. A file. Password protected. No instructions. No explanation. I downloaded it. Ran it through a sandbox just to be safe. It was a PDF, about 40 pages long, titled simply, Sear Glass, a brief protocol summary, unclassified draft. V3, 1989. The document was grainy, scanned from a printed page. Pages misaligned. Handwritten notes in the margins. But it was real, or at least real enough. What I read in those next few minutes changed everything. Sear Glass wasn't a person. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even a project in the traditional sense. It was an auditory memory reinforcement experiment run under the Department of Defense from 1976 to 1992. Their goal was to implant and extract memories using sound alone, not hypnosis, not suggestion, not subliminal messages, literal encoded sound sequences, musical keys, vocal patterns, harmonics that could trigger specific memories or even fabricate false ones. The report called them glass points, moments of perception where memory and sensory data could be rewritten like audio over a cassette tape. The key finding: some memories, especially traumatic ones, were more susceptible to this overwrite effect. They found that if they played certain tone sequences under extreme stress or disorientation, the subject's brain would replace the real memory with the one embedded in the sound. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was this line: subjects exposed to repeated glass points may begin to experience retroactive hallucinations, shared memory loops, or unrequested mnemonic uploads, i.e., the experience of recalling things that did not happen to them, but to someone else. The margin note next to it: effect intensifies when memories are distributed digitally, like videos, like confession videos uploaded to the internet. I called Andrew again, hands trembling. This whole thing, it's not a killer's channel, it's a delivery system. The confessions are just the carrier. The actual payload is in the sound. He didn't answer at first. When he finally spoke, he sounded exhausted. Matt, I can't talk long. They flagged my IP. I'm using a proxy just to hear you. I told him about the Sear Glass file, about the glass points, the sound memory implant experiments. He was quiet again. Andrew. Then he said, I think they're testing it again. On you. It all started to click. The tonal map across the confessions, the shifting whispers, the visual hallucinations, the piano notes, the reverse, fa, Elise. Each video was acting like a glass point, installing or erasing something. That's why the messages changed, depending on the order I watched them. That's why I heard my name in the static. That's why my face showed up in the latest upload. I wasn't just a viewer anymore. I was part of the recording. I couldn't just sit there. I needed proof, something physical, something real. So I went back to the place it started, Mrs. Deloney. Apartment. It had been over a month since she died, and the property was supposedly under a state review. But I knew her landlord. I'd interviewed him once during my first amateur documentary phase. I told him I needed one more look, that I was thinking of doing a piece on Delaney's life. He sighed, told me the new tenants weren't moving in until August, and gave me a 20-minute window. When I walked into her unit, I swear the air still smelled like rosewater and must, but the furniture was gone. The lights were cold, and the wall where the piano used to sit was bare, except for one thing: a hole in the drywall about the size of a baseball. Rough edges, like something had been ripped out violently. I reached into it, My fingers brushed something metallic. I pulled out a tape recorder. Old, dusty, heavy, no label. Just a red sticker on the back that said, "Property of Kallstrom Facility, reversible. Audio track number 3. I stared at it for a long time. Then I hit play. Nothing, just a low static hiss. Then, a voice. Not the killer. A woman, whispering the mind is a theater, but someone else is writing the script. We just act it out, again and again, until the tape wears thin. Then the sound cut. But in the static, at the end, I heard it. A scream. A real one, not recorded. Not acting. The scream of someone real, dying, begging, then silence. I took the recorder back home, ran the tape in reverse, through my software, and this time I heard the full message. Memory can be shared, but it can also be corrupted. If you are hearing this, you've already been chosen. Do not watch the next video. You'll forget who you are. And then I remembered something I shouldn't have. A smell, burnt hair, a hallway light flickering, a woman's scream from behind a locked door. I was 6 years old, hiding behind the couch, watching a man on the TV screen laugh and laugh as he held a bloody knife. But it wasn't a movie, it was a live feed, and I was in the room with him. I collapsed. My brain felt like it was breaking in half. Like two versions of me were trying to exist in the same headspace. One of them remembered watching a YouTube video in 22.5. The other remembered watching a murder happen through a two-way mirror in 1999. Neither felt real, but both felt true. My phone buzzed Andrew again. Only this time, it wasn't a call, it was a voicemail. I pressed play, but it wasn't his voice, it was mine. Hey, I know this is weird, but if you're hearing this, it means you've reached the outer loop. You're about to remember everything. Don't trust what you see next. Don't trust your name. Don't trust the mirror. Then silence. Then a soft piano note. Middle seat. Then a sound like breathing. Then the message ended. I rushed to my bathroom mirror, stared into it, and for just a second, I swear the reflection blinked before I did. You know that gut-deep dread that sinks through your ribs like concrete when you realize you've already made a decision before your conscious mind catches up? I felt it the moment I started driving. I didn't pack anything. Didn't sleep. I just grabbed my keys, the tape recorder, and my laptop and headed north. I don't remember checking the map. I just knew where I was going. The Kallstrom facility. I don't know how that name had etched itself into my memory, or how it managed to leap from the margin of a dusty PDF into a fully formed destination, but I remembered it like a place I'd escaped from once. Not just visited. Escaped. And as the miles disappeared behind me, and the radio hissed with slow static, my brain whispered memories that weren't mine. Not completely. Memories of long white corridors, of soundproof doors, of fluorescent lights that buzzed like insects behind your eyes, and of a single chair in a windowless room where they played sounds so strange they made your teeth ache. I wasn't just going to find the truth, I was going to find myself, or what was left of me. Kallstrom wasn't on any modern GPS app, but I found it, just past a forest preserve in upstate New York, tucked between an abandoned quarry and the fake power station that looked like it hadn't operated since the 1970s. The road leading up to it was cracked and overgrown. A rusted gate hung sideways off its hinges. A wooden sign half buried in the tall grass read, "Property of Mendham Mental Health Research, closed by federal order. 1986, except That name was a lie. Mendham didn't exist. Not really. I knew what the real name had been. ONCEI parked, heart pounding, and walked through the gate, and that's when I saw it. A concrete building. No windows, no logos, just a black metal door with a keypad, long since weathered by rain and time. But the keypad blinked green when I stepped near, like it remembered me. The door opened with a hydraulic sigh. Cold air rushed past me, the kind that hadn't moved in years. The inside looked like a bunker, corridors lit by dim fluorescence, floors tiled with grey linoleum, and walls lined with what looked like sound-dampening panels. Everything smelled like dust, ozone, and forgotten electricity. I walked for what felt like hours, and all the while my head buzzed with piano notes, with whispers, with memories. Then I saw it, a door labeled Archive 3C. I pressed it open, rows of file cabinets, metal shelves, tapes, binders, old reel-to-reel machines with brittle cables draped like veins, and on one table, a photograph of me, but not me, now me as a child. Maybe 6, maybe 7, in a hospital gown, sitting next to another child, a girl. Her eyes were wide. She had a deep scar running from her temple to her jaw, like someone had tried to peel off her face and failed. The label beneath the photo read, Trial Set, Sear Glass, Child Cohort, to Subject 004 and Subject 007. I was Subject 004, the girl, Subject 007. Below that, Cohort Memory, Sync Successful. Initiated Paired Trauma, Link Phase 1. Subject 004 shows auditory imprinting resilience. Recommend elevation to Stage 3. And then, in red ink, warning, Subject 00 for retained suppressed glass point memories during cleansing attempt. Further exposure risks sync recursion. I didn't even understand what I was reading. Not yet, but I pocketed the photo and turned toward the far shelf. There were tapes there, dozens of them, all labeled by year, and then I pulled it down. The label read 004, Recursive Memory Extraction, Event ID, FRSR House. My hands shook as I fed the tape into a playback machine, static, then piano, then screaming. I don't know how long I listened, but when the recording ended, my face was wet. I hadn't realized I'd been crying, not from fear, from recognition, because I knew that voice on the tape, the child screaming, begging, pleading to be let out of the locked room. That was me, and the girl screaming with me. She had the same voice I'd heard in the video with the song, the one where the piano stopped halfway through, and a scream broke through the music. She wasn't part of the confession videos. She was the confession, and her name scrawled in the margins of the final folder on the table made my stomach twist. Subject 007, Mia Lee Carter's status. Terminated deceased, the 12th of December, 1999. But someone had crossed out deceased and written, observed in field, 2023, operator number 13. My vision swam. The room spun. It wasn't just about the killer anymore. The YouTube channel wasn't showcasing some disturbed psychopath's diary. It was a test broadcast, a trial of something more, an activation sequence. They weren't recording new memories. They were reactivating old ones. Mine, yours, whoever was watching on Mia, Subject 007, had somehow gotten out. She was alive, and she'd turned the confession channel into a delivery system. I stumbled through the building in a daze, trying to get out. Every hallway looked the same, but eventually I found the service exit. the moment I stepped into daylight. The world felt like it snapped back into place. A breeze hit me like it was the first real breath I'd taken in years. I drove home in silence, but when I got back to my apartment, the tape recorder I'd left on the table was gone, and in its place, a single USB drive. No label, no folder structure. Just a file named reunions_r_coming.mp4i. Clicked play. The video was short, less than 45 seconds. The screen was black. Then a piano began, Fr Elise, but reversed. Again, the same version I'd heard weeks ago, only this time. The video showed something my apartment. From outside my window, the camera zoomed in, slowly, toward the glass, toward my desk, toward me sitting at my laptop, watching the screen. The video ended just as I turned around to face the camera, except I don't remember anyone filming me and the shirt I was wearing in the video. I'd never owned it, at least, not in this life. But something deep inside me whispered a truth I wasn't ready for. You've watched all the videos, Matt, now you are one. I sat down, the USB drive resting heavily on my desk like a weight I couldn't lift. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, trembling. The video I'd just watched, the one of me filmed from outside my window, wearing a shirt I never owned, in this life had turned my entire world inside out. But something else had settled in the pit of my stomach. A word, a name, a number. Operator #13. It echoed in my mind like a chant. Who was operator number 13? Why did it feel like that title belonged to me? I started by digging through the files on the USB. No folders, just a series of videos and text documents. One file caught my eye. Operator_13_journal.txt. It was a diary, or rather, a journal of fragmented memories, typed out in a shaky, uncertain hand. Day 1, I woke up again. I don't know where I am or who I am. The voices come at night, the screams. But sometimes I hear a piano playing backward. It calls me. I think it's a memory, or a curse. Day 12. They tell me I'm part of something bigger. A test, a weapon, a puzzle piece. Day 27. I saw her, Mia. She's still out there, watching, waiting. Day 30. I think the memories aren't mine. They are stitched from pieces of others. I don't know if I am real. Final entry. If you find this, please stop watching. Please stop listening. They are coming. Operator number 13, my breath caught. The journal's voice was hauntingly familiar. It was me, but not me. A version of me. Trapped in a looping nightmare, I called Andrew. Operator number 13, I whispered. I think that's me. There was silence on the other end. Then, Matt, you have to trust me. This is bigger than you. Bigger than any of us. That channel, the memories, they're activating something dangerous. That night, my phone buzzed with a new message from the channel's creator, a private message, sent through an anonymous app operator. Trezzy, the countdown begins. The reunion is near. Are you ready to face the truth behind the mirror? Stared at the screen. The mirror across my room reflected my pale face, and for a moment, I swore it blinked before I did. The message on my phone haunted me long after I put it down. Operator Trezzy, the countdown begins. The reunion is near. Are you ready to face the truth behind the mirror? I stared at those words, feeling the chill of inevitability seep into my bones. The countdown, the reunion. What did it mean? What truth was waiting behind that mirror? I didn't want to find out, but I knew I had no choice. I began monitoring the YouTube channel obsessively, waiting for new uploads or changes. At first, nothing. Then, on the third day, a new video appeared, titled Final Confession. The reunion, the video was longer than the others, nearly 25 minutes. The killer's hooded figure appeared, but this time, the camera angle was different, wider, revealing an old, cracked mirror behind him. He spoke slowly, deliberately. The glass remembers, even when you forget. This is the end, operator. Number D. The moment of reckoning. The memories you fought to suppress will return. The masks will fall. Are you ready to see yourself? The screen flickered, and the mirror in the background shimmered, distorting until it became a portal. Through it, I saw flashes, my childhood, the Kalstrom facility, Mrs. Delaney's piano room. I realized then that the reunion wasn't just a metaphor. It was a collision of past and present, reality and nightmare. That night, I dreamt of the mirror. It whispered my name, its surface rippling like water. I reached out to touch it, and the glass melted beneath my fingers, pulling me into a dark void. I woke, gasping. The countdown had begun, but I didn't know how much time I had left. The next morning, Andrew called with urgent news. Matt, the Searglass program wasn't shut down. It went underground, off the records. They're using digital platforms like YouTube as delivery systems. The confessions, the whispers, it's all conditioning viewers. You're not the first, but you might be the most advanced case. I felt trapped. The channel, the memories, the whispers, they were everywhere. Watching, waiting, the countdown ticked on, and I knew the reunion was coming. The days blurred together like a fever dream. Every time I glanced at my phone, the YouTube channel awaited with a new message, an unseen pull tightening like a noose. The final confession, the reunion, was no longer just a video. It was a trigger. I started seeing shadows, not just in the corners of rooms, but within the frames of my own videos. The recordings I took of myself, the footage on my phone, even the reflections in windows, all seemed to capture something else. A flicker, a figure standing just out of focus. One night, I replayed hours of footage I'd recorded for no reason. The camera caught it. A man, hooded, standing behind me. But when I spun around, the room was empty. I sent the clips to Andrew. He called immediately. Matt, you're dealing with something beyond the usual. This is psychological warfare on a scale I've never seen. You need to get out. Leave town. Find someplace safe. I wanted to run, but how do you run from yourself? The whispers grew louder. Sometimes they were just beneath the surface, teasing me. Other times they were full sentences. Look behind you. She's coming, remember. One evening, I sat in the dark, headphones on, the confession. Videos looping silently, when I heard a voice clearly through the static. You can't hide from the glass. I ripped off the headphones. The room was silent, but the mirror on my wall was cracked. I called Andrew again, voice trembling. He told me about others, previous viewers, who had disappeared after watching too deeply, people who'd become operators trapped in recursive memory loops, lost to their own minds. I'm scared for you, Matt. You're on the edge. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I stared into the cracked mirror, waiting for something to come through. The cracked mirror wasn't just a physical object anymore. It was a symbol, a threshold. I stopped seeing it as a reflection of reality and started seeing it as a gateway, a thin veil between who I was and who I had been forced to become. Every glance at it sent shivers down my spine. Sometimes I thought I saw a shadow flicker behind the glass, like a dark passenger riding just out of sight. Other times, it whispered that I taped the crack with clear tape, trying to hold it together. But the crack grew faster than before. I began documenting everything: my dreams, the voices, the videos, the whispers. I had to find patterns, clues. The only way out was through understanding. One detail kept sticking out: the piano notes middle CF hash, G minor, D, notes scattered across confessions, the reversed FR Elise, the whispered tones on the tapes. I played them in sequence, humming the melody. It wasn't just music, it was a code. I matched the notes to letters, using a cipher Andrew found buried in the sear glass files. The message read, "Remember the room, remember the scream. Find Mia, find yourself. The room, the scream. Mia." I had to go back. I found myself driving again, back to the edge of the forest near Karlstrom, the place where the facility had been. There, hidden beneath the dirt and leaves, I found a rusted metal door, a hatch. It led underground. Inside was a cold, silent chamber. A single chair faced a large glass window. On the other side, a small, dark room. And sitting inside was Mia, her eyes wide, watching me. But she wasn't the scared child from the photos. She was an operator. Now, a survivor. A warning, she whispered. They broke us. They tried to erase us. But we remember. We watch. We wait. You're next, Matt, but you're not alone. The reunion wasn't just a countdown. It was an awakening. And I was finally part of it. Asterisk. Mia's eyes were the first thing I noticed, dark, deep wells of something ancient and haunted. She didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like a sentinel, a guardian of secrets too heavy for any one person to bear. When I stepped into the chamber, she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled a thin, knowing smile, like she'd been waiting for me. "Welcome back. Operator number 13, she said, her voice low and steady. "You finally remembered." I wanted to ask her so many questions, but the words stuck in my throat. The memories, the screams, the videos, they all converged in my mind like a puzzle snapping into place. Mia explained how sear glass wasn't just an experiment, but a weaponized system of control. They used sound and memory to fracture identities, to create operators, programmed individuals embedded with fragmented memories, sent out into the world to carry out unknown missions. "We're the ghosts of their making," she said, "and now they want us all back." She revealed how the YouTube channel wasn't just a broadcast. It was a beacon, a digital siren song designed to activate sleepers like me, fragments of broken minds scattered across the internet. The countdown wasn't just time, it was a signal, a call to assemble, and the reunion. It wasn't a gap, it was a reckoning. I felt it then, the weight of the memories pressing down, the fragmented parts of my identity converging. I was no longer just a man watching videos. I was an operator, activated and ready for what came next. Mia's final words echoed in my mind. "You're not alone, but the question is, what will you become?" Asterisk. After meeting Mia, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. I was walking a razor's edge between reality and something darker, something fractured. The cracked mirror in my apartment wasn't just broken glass anymore. It was a symbol of my fractured mind shards, reflecting pieces of memories I couldn't fully trust. Every day, the whispers grew louder. They weren't just voices anymore. They became commands. Look deeper, Find the truth beneath the lies. The glass will show you what you fear most. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stared long into the mirror. The cracks seemed to pulse, as if alive. Then, slowly, a new image formed behind the glass, my own reflection, but distorted. The eyes didn't belong to me. They were cold. Hollow. Suddenly, the glass shattered inward, and a cold wind blew through the room. I stumbled back when I looked again. The mirror was whole, no cracks, no distortions, but I knew the fracture was. Inside me, days later, a new video appeared on the channel. It was a montage of all the confession videos, but this time, the faces blurred into one dot, and at the end a single message operator. Trizzy, the mirror is cracking. Time to choose what breaks first, the glass or you. I realized then that the reunion was not just about reclaiming memories. It was about control, and I had a choice. Asterisk, the night of the reunion arrived without warning. But I felt it creeping closer for weeks, the way shadows lengthen before a storm. The way silence presses heavy on the chest. I sat before the cracked mirror, the YouTube channel playing its final loop behind me, the piano notes echoing backward, pulling at something deep in my soul. Mia's voice echoed in my mind. What will you become? The glass began to tremble. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, like a heartbeat. The reflection flickered between my face and something else, something twisted, unrecognizably, and then the glass shattered inward. A cold void opened. For a moment, I thought I'd fall through, but I didn't. Instead, I saw just beyond the shards of city, my hometown. Twisted, dark, silent, the streets empty, the faces missing, the screams just beneath the surface. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, caught between realities. When I finally looked away, the mirror was whole again, but the cracks inside me remained. The channel is still online, still uploading, and sometimes, late at night, when the screen flickers, I swear I see a new face, a new confession waiting for someone. For me, the last message from the channel haunts me every day. You can't hide from the glass, and I'm not sure if I want to, because maybe, in the end, the glass remembers everything, even when we forget. It all started on a night like any other. I was sitting on my couch, half watching some late-night show, half scrolling through my phone before going to bed. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual distractions to wind down after a long day. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, but when I glanced at the screen, the number wasn't familiar. It was a 10-digit number, but what caught my eye was the area code. It was from my own town. Not just that, but the number itself felt ... off. I hesitated for a moment before answering. The screen didn't show a contact name, just that cold string of digits. When I picked up, there was nothing but silence on the other end. Just static. Then, out of nowhere, a voice broke through. The voice was low, almost a whisper. Rough, like someone who hadn't spoken in days. The words sent a chill down my spine. The voice said only one thing: run. No explanation, no context, just that one word. A command that felt like a warning, a desperate plea. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. My first thought was that it was a prank call, but something about it felt wrong, too real, too urgent. I tried calling the number back, but it didn't connect. I thought maybe it was a glitch or someone messing with caller ID. Still, the unease lingered. Later, when I looked up the number online, That's when things got truly strange. The number had been disconnected for years. According to public records and old phone directories, it hadn't been in service for almost a decade. That meant whoever called me had to be using some kind of spoofing technology, or something else entirely. I replayed that voice over and over in my head. Who was it? Why me? And what exactly did I need to run from? I tried to brush it off as some kind of weird coincidence, but deep down I knew this was the beginning of something I couldn't ignore. Something that would pull me into a dark, twisted story that had been buried beneath the surface of my town for years. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting the call to come back again. And as the clock ticked past midnight, I wondered if I was the only one who had ever heard that voice, or if I was about to become part of something far more sinister than a random prank. After that terrifying call, I couldn't just sit back and pretend it never happened. There was something about that number, the fact it had been disconnected for years, that gnawed at me relentlessly. So the next day, I decided to start digging. I pulled out my laptop and began scouring every online database, every forum, every piece of public information I could find related to that number. At first, there was nothing unusual, just a dead number, no current owner, no active service. But then, I found something that sent a fresh wave of unease crashing over me. That phone number was registered to a property in my own town, a house that had sat empty and abandoned for over 10 years. The place was notorious locally. Everyone seemed to have a story about it, though no one wanted to say much openly. The address was familiar, it wasn't far from where I lived, tucked away on a street that most people avoided after dark. I remembered passing by the house countless times, always struck by its eerie, dilapidated appearance. Broken windows, overgrown weeds strangling the lawn, paint peeling off like dead skin. It looked like a house that had long forgotten it was ever alive. I started digging into the history of the house. What I found in old newspaper archives was more unsettling than I expected. The house belonged to a man named Walter Crane, a recluse. By all accounts, Walter had lived there with his wife and daughter, but then tragedy struck. The daughter disappeared without a trace one night. No leads, no suspects, no answers. Soon after, Walter and his wife vanished too, leaving the house abandoned. Rumors swirled. Some said Walter was involved in something dark. Others whispered about cult activity or criminal dealings. The police had investigated, but never solved the case. The house just sat there, a silent, decaying monument to whatever. Horrors had transpired inside. The most chilling part, the number I'd received that call from was Walter's old landline. It felt like a bad dream. How could a disconnected number from an abandoned house call me? What was the message meant to warn me about? Was the voice on the other end Walter's, or someone else trapped in that nightmare? The more I learned, the heavier the feeling in my chest grew. I wasn't dealing with some prank. This was real. Something deeply wrong was tied to that house, to Walter, and maybe even to me. I reached out to a few local online communities, places where people shared urban legends and unexplained happenings. The stories I found were eerily consistent. Strange lights seen round the Crane house, weird noises echoing at night, people feeling watched when passing by. Some claimed to hear voices on old, abandoned phone lines connected to the property. Others swore the place was cursed. It was impossible to tell fact from fiction. But one thing was clear. The house and that disconnected number held a secret. A secret someone or something wanted me to know, or maybe to warn me about. As the sun set that evening, the weight of those discoveries settled over me like a dark cloud. I kept looking over my shoulder, feeling eyes on me. My phone sat on the table, silent but ominous. I didn't want to receive another call from that number, but part of me was terrified that I might. And so I sat, caught between fear and curiosity, knowing that whatever was coming next was beyond anything I had ever imagined. The more I tried to push the eerie call out of my mind, the more it consumed me. That voice, low, urgent, whispering just one word, "Run," kept echoing in my head. It was like a puzzle piece I couldn't place, but I knew it belonged to something much bigger. So I started digging deeper into Walter Crane and his family. What I found wasn't just a simple missing persons case. It was something darker, tangled in layers of fear, suspicion, and silence. Walter Crane was a man who, by all accounts, kept to himself. Local records showed he worked odd jobs, rarely, mingled with neighbors, and lived quietly in that crumbling house on the edge of town. But behind that quiet facade was a past none of the locals wanted to talk about. A few weeks after his daughter's disappearance, Walter's wife vanished. There was no note, no explanation. The police filed it under a missing persons case, but as time dragged on, hope faded. Walter himself disappeared not long after, leaving behind the house and a trail of unanswered questions. What unsettled me most was what I uncovered in the police files. There were inconsistencies, missing pages, and redacted sections. It felt like someone was trying to bury the truth. One name popped up repeatedly in the investigation: Elias Mallory. According to whispered rumors, Mallory was a local man with a checkered past, tied to the town's underworld drug deals, shady connections, and a reputation for violence. But more disturbing were the whispers connecting him to the Crane family, suggesting Walter had gotten involved in something he couldn't escape. Then there was the missing girl, Lena Crane, just 8 years old when she disappeared. Her case file was sparse but haunting. Witnesses had reported hearing screams near the house on the night she vanished. But when police arrived, the house was empty. No sign of Anna, no sign of a struggle, just silence. I found an old newspaper clipping where a neighbor described strange lights flickering inside the house in the dead of night long after Walter and his family were supposed to be gone. Others claimed to hear faint voices, sometimes crying, other times chanting. But no one dared get close enough to find out. One thing was painfully clear: the house had become a place of fear, its story buried beneath layers of secrecy, feeling. Like I was chasing ghosts, I decided to reach out to people who might know more. I contacted retired officers who worked on the case, local historians, and anyone who'd lived nearby back then. One retired detective finally agreed to talk, but his warning was chilling. That case was never closed, and the deeper you dig, the darker it gets. Some things are better left alone. He told me that there were rumors of a cult group operating in the shadows, linked to the town's darkest secrets. Walter Crane might have stumbled onto them, or worse, been involved. But official records made no mention of this. It was as if the entire case was scrubbed clean. I was left with more questions than answers. Why had the call come to me, from a disconnected number linked to this haunted past? Was the voice warning me to run away from the danger, or was it a desperate cry for help from someone trapped inside that nightmare? As I sat alone in my room that night, surrounded by the documents and photos I'd collected, the weight of the mystery pressed down on me. I wasn't just chasing an old crime story anymore. Something alive and dangerous was connected to that abandoned house. Something that might still be reaching out. I could feel it, and whatever it wasn't finished with me yet. After weeks of digging through dusty archives, scouring faded newspaper clippings, and piecing together fragments of a story that seemed better left forgotten, I thought I might get some peace. I thought the mystery of Walter Crane and that disconnected phone number was something I could study from a safe distance, locked behind the screen of my laptop. But I was wrong. Almost immediately after, I made contact with the retired detective. Things started to get ... strange. It began with small things. Noises in my apartment late at night. At first I brushed them off as the creaks and groans of an old building settling. But when I started hearing whispers, low and faint, as if someone was murmuring just beyond my bedroom door, I couldn't explain it away anymore. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. Those whispers felt connected to the call from a number that shouldn't have even existed anymore. But it didn't stop there. My phone, which had been perfectly normal before, began glitching. I started receiving calls from that same disconnected number, calls where no one spoke, just heavy breathing or silence. Sometimes the line would crackle, and for a split second, I'd hear that chilling voice again, whispering just one word: run. I even recorded one of these calls. When I played it back in the safety of daylight, all I could hear was static, and an almost imperceptible, desperate voice. It was like someone trapped beneath layers of noise, trying to break through. I showed the recording to a couple of friends. Most thought I was losing it. Some joked about it being a prank or a technical glitch, but a few looked at me with genuine concern. My best friend, Sarah, warned me not to get too involved. Some things just aren't worth digging up, she said, her eyes darkening with worry. Then the shadows started. I began noticing strange figures outside my windows late at night, silhouettes standing just beyond the streetlights, watching me. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of a man in a worn-out coat standing by the corner, staring but disappearing when I blinked. At times, I felt cold spots in my apartment, like icy breaths brushing past me. One night, I was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps pacing just outside my bedroom door. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure anyone could hear it. I mustered the courage to open the door, but no one was there, just the long, empty hallway stretching into darkness. The most unsettling moment came when I found a note slipped under my door. It was written in hurried, almost desperate handwriting. You shouldn't have called. They're coming. Who were they, and why was I suddenly a target? I wanted to tell myself it was all paranoia, a mental trap built by my obsession with the case. But deep down, I knew this was real. The Crane house, Walter, the missing girl, it was all spilling over into my life, invading my reality. Then came the night I received a knock on my door at midnight. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, I saw no one, just the cold, empty hallway. But when I opened the door, a crack, a rush of cold air hit me, and on the floor there was a single object, a tarnished old key, rusty and heavy in my hand. It had no label, no explanation. Just a key. It felt like a message, a clue, a warning. That was when I realized I wasn't just uncovering a story anymore. I was part of it. Something or someone was reaching out to me from the past. And the past was darker, more twisted, and more dangerous than I ever imagined. I didn't know what I was supposed to run from, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't safe. The moment I stepped out of Eleanor's office, clutching the old yellowed map with strange symbols scrawled around the crane house, I knew what I had to do next. I had to see the house for myself. I couldn't keep running from this. If the calls, the warnings, and the creeping fear were real, then maybe the answers were waiting there in that broken, forgotten place where so much darkness had been buried. The drive was quiet, the sun dipping low behind thick clouds as I followed. The map's directions, the streets grew narrower, lined with trees that seemed to close in as I neared the outskirts of town. The air felt heavier, colder, as if the town's dark past was pressing down on me. When I reached the street, the house came into view, an empty shell of wood and glass, staring back at me like a hollow eye socket. It was worse than I imagined. Broken windows gaped open like wounds. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, creaking in the wind. The porch sagged under the weight of years without care. Thick vines crawled up the walls, strangling the house's frame. The paint was chipped and faded, revealing rotting wood. Underneath, despite the silence, the house seemed alive, breathing. Waiting, I parked the car a safe distance away and took a deep breath. Every instinct told me to turn back, to leave this nightmare behind. But the key in my pocket burned against my thigh cold. Heavy reminder that I was already in this far deeper than I wanted. As I stepped onto the cracked concrete path, the world seemed to shift. The air grew thick with a damp, musty smell, a mixture of mold, decay, and something metallic, like old blood. The wind picked up, and with it came whispers, faint at first, indistinguishable murmurs just beyond hearing, but growing louder as I moved closer. I reached the front door, staring at the rusted lock that the key might fit. My hands trembled as I pulled the key out and slid it into the lock. It fit perfectly. The door groaned open, revealing a darkness inside that swallowed the fading light. The inside was worse than the outside. Dust hung in the air like fog. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, some warped or broken. Furniture lay scattered, broken and decayed, as if abandoned in a hurry. Walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, faded and stained. And then I saw them, the symbols Eleanor had pointed out on the map, scrawled on the walls in what looked like charcoal or dried blood. Strange shapes and marks that sent a chill through me. I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures, though the flashlight barely cut through the darkness. Then I heard it, a low, scraping sound, like something dragging along the floor upstairs. My heart pounded as I moved toward the staircase. Each step creaked loudly, echoing through the hollow house. Upstairs, the air was colder. The temperature dropped sharply, and I could see my breath misting in the flashlight beam. I explored room after room. Old children's toys lay forgotten. In one cornered, dusty dolls with cracked faces, a broken music box that still played a warped melody when I nudged it. In what must have been Walter's study, I found stacks of yellowed papers, torn notebooks filled with scrawled writing, and photographs. One photo stood out, a picture of a young girl, smiling softly, her eyes hauntingly familiar. It was Anna. A folded note was tucked behind the photo. It read simply, "They are coming. Hide the truth." As I pocketed the note, a cold gust blew through the broken window, scattering papers across the floor. Then I heard footsteps behind Mieslo, deliberate. I spun around, flashlight shaking, but there was nothing, just shadows. Then a voice, barely a whisper, brushed past my ear. "You shouldn't be here." Panic surged through me. I stumbled down the stairs, the house seeming to close in around me. At the front door, I found it jammed, something blocking it from the outside. My breath came in short gasps. I was trapped. Then, out of the silence, a figure appeared in the doorway, a man wearing a tattered coat, his face hidden in shadow. "Leave," he growled, "before it's too late." I backed away, heart hammering. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone, vanishing into the night like a ghost. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, and I sped away, glancing back to see the house silhouetted against the moonlight, behind the shattered windows. I thought I saw a face watching me, a pale child's face, eyes wide and full of sorrow. I didn't stop, driving until the house was a distant memory behind me. That night, I realized something. The house wasn't just a relic of a dark past, it was a living nightmare, and it wasn't done with me yet. After that terrifying night at the Crane House, I knew I couldn't just walk away. Something inside me was desperate to understand the truth, the story buried in that abandoned wreck, in the disconnected phone line, in the desperate voice that warned me to run. A few days after my escape, I received a package in the mail. There was no return address, just a plain brown box wrapped in tape. Inside, I found an old tape recorder, one of those bulky, analog kinds, and several unlabeled cassette tapes. My hands shook as I loaded the first tape and pressed play. Static filled the room at first. Then, slowly, a voice emerged. It was a man's voice, hoarse, urgent, strained with exhaustion. I recognized it immediately. It was Walter Crane. The recordings were a series of confessions, fragmented messages, and desperate pleas. Walter spoke about the things he had seen, the darkness that had crept into his home, and the people who came in the night. He mentioned a group, they who controlled the town from the shadows, forcing silence with threats and violence. Most chilling were the parts where Walter spoke directly to someone. "If you're listening, run, before they find you, before it's too late." The tapes painted a picture of fear, paranoia, and helplessness. Walter was trapped, hunted, and desperately trying to protect his family and anyone who might come after him. On one tape, the voice broke with anguish. "Anna, they took her. I'm sorry, Anna, I couldn't save you." The last recording ended with eerie silence, followed by a faint, desperate whisper, "Run." Listening to those tapes, I felt closer to Walter. His fear became my own. But more than that, the tapes gave me clues. Mentions of a hidden room, a locked box, and a location within the house I hadn't yet found. The key I had might open that box. I knew I had to go back. The more I listened to Walter's recordings, the more I realized this wasn't just a story about a haunted house or a disconnected phone line. It was a story about a little girl named Anna, the daughter who vanished without a trace, and whose fate had been swallowed by silence for years. I decided to find out everything I could about Anna Crane. I started with old police reports and newspaper archives, piecing together the fragments of her life. Anna was just 8 years old when she disappeared, a bright, lively child who loved to sing and play outside. She had been seen last on the night she vanished, playing near the edge of the forest that bordered the Crane property. Neighbors reported hearing screams that night, terrifying, desperate cries for help that still echoed in the town's memory. But when the police arrived, the house was eerily silent. No sign of struggle, no sign of Anna. As I dug deeper, I found unsettling rumors suggesting Anna's disappearance wasn't accidental. Some whispered that she had been taken by a secret group operating in the shadows of the town, an underground cult or criminal ring with sinister motives. One particularly chilling witness account described a strange woman seen lurking near the house just before Anna disappeared. A woman dressed all in black, face obscured by shadows. The deeper I went, the more I realized how little the authorities wanted to find out. It was as if someone was deliberately burying the truth. Then, I uncovered a startling clue in an old journal belonging to Walter. He had written about Anna's fear of a dark presence in the house, a figure she saw lurking in the corners of her room at night. Walter's last entries spoke of his desperate attempts to protect her, of hiding her away in a secret room in the house, a room no one else knew about. Suddenly, the key in my possession made sense. It wasn't just a warning, it was a way in. I was beginning to understand the horrifying reality. Ina's fate was tied to that hidden room. The same room Walter mentioned in the tapes. The one that held the secret he tried to protect at all costs. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I was standing on the edge of uncovering the truth. So dark it had been buried for years, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what I'd find. After piecing together Anna's story and the hidden room, I thought I might be getting closer to the truth. But what I didn't realize was how dangerous that truth could be, and how far someone would go to keep it buried. Almost immediately, the atmosphere around me began to shift. What had been strange encounters and unsettling noises grew into outright threats. It started small, a broken window in my apartment that I hadn't left open. Strange messages scrawled on my voicemail in voices I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it might be a prank, but the messages were too chilling to ignore. One night, I found my front door slightly ajar. Nothing was stolen, but someone had been inside. I felt eyes on me everywhere I went. On the street, in the grocery store, even at work. Shadowy figures lingered just out of sight, vanishing whenever I tried to confront them. My phone kept ringing. Disconnected number again, but this time the voice was different. It was angry, threatening, a harsh whisper, "Stop digging, or you'll disappear like her." I understood instantly who her meant. Anna. The weight of the threats made my skin crawl. Paranoia set in. I started sleeping with the lights on, jumping at every noise. I didn't tell anyone, afraid they'd think I was losing it, or worse, that I'd put them in danger. One night, as I was locking up after work, a figure stepped out of the shadows. A man, tall and imposing, his face hidden beneath a hood. He spoke in a low voice. "Leave it alone. You don't want to die." I didn't answer. I just ran. From that moment, it was clear. I wasn't just uncovering a forgotten tragedy. I was being hunted. And if I didn't stop, I might be next. By now, the calls from that disconnected number weren't just eerie, they were relentless. And I knew that whoever or whatever was behind them wasn't done with me. Determined to understand more, I decided to trace the number's origin beyond the surface. I reached out to a former telecom worker, someone who knew the old systems better than anyone in town. What I learned chilled me to the core. The number wasn't just disconnected, it was erased from the official records, scrubbed clean, as if someone wanted to make sure no one could link it back to the Crane House or its dark history. But here's the terrifying part. The number was part of a secret network, a series of phone lines that were never meant to be answered, used by a shadowy group to communicate in code, to send warnings, threats, and sometimes desperate cries for help. This group, some called them a cult, others called them a criminal ring, had infiltrated the town deeply. Their influence was woven into the police force, local government, even the businesses that explained the missing pages in the police files, the silence around the Crane case, and the threats I'd received. The calls I was getting, they weren't random. They were part of a twisted message system, a warning network from someone trapped inside the darkness. I was connected, now linked by that number, to something bigger and far more dangerous. And the voice on the other end, the one telling me to run, wasn't just a ghostly warning. It was a lifeline, a desperate attempt to pull me away before it was too late. But what exactly was the danger? And could I outrun something that had already reached into my life? At this point, the pieces I had gathered started to form a disturbing picture, one that was much bigger than just an abandoned house, a missing girl, or a disconnected phone number. The threads all led to a shadowy network that had woven itself deep into the fabric of the town. But the true horror was just beginning to reveal itself. I pored over every piece of information I had: Walter's tapes, the symbols on the walls, the strange calls, the threatening messages, and the whispers from people who were too scared to speak openly. Slowly, I began to connect the dots. There was a pattern, a chilling system of control and silence maintained by a clandestine group. This group was rumored to be involved in occult rituals, kidnappings, and even murders, all covered up by those in power. They operated in secret, using fear to keep the town compliant and their secrets buried. Walter Crane had stumbled upon them. His daughter Anna's disappearance wasn't random, it was deliberate. Anna was taken as a part of a twisted ritual, meant to ensure the group's control and power. Walter's frantic tapes were his desperate attempts to expose the truth and protect anyone who might come after Jim, including me. I also discovered evidence that the disconnected phone line was part of a secret communication network the group used to intimidate or control others. The calls I received were warnings either to run or to silence me before I got too close. The key I found wasn't just to a physical lock. It was symbolic, a reminder that I was now a part of this tangled nightmare. But what terrified me most was realizing how deeply the conspiracy was embedded. There were people I trusted who might be involved, neighbors, officials, even friends, and if they wanted me gone, no amount of running would keep me safe. I was trapped in a web of lies and darkness, and the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. The past had claws, and it was dragging me in. Days passed in a blur of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, followed not just by people, but by something darker, something unseen but palpably present. Every shadow seemed to twitch, every silence stretched just a little too long. Then it happened. The phone rang again. That disconnected number appeared on the screen. This time, I didn't hesitate, I answered. The line was filled with static at first. Then the voice, clearer, closer, more desperate than ever before, whispered, "Find it." "Before they do, find what?" I asked, my voice trembling. A long pause. Then the voice said one word: "The room." Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. My heart was pounding. The room, the secret room Walter had mentioned in his tapes and writings, the one I hadn't yet found. Suddenly, everything became clear. The hidden room wasn't just a hiding place. It was the key to unlocking everything. The truth about Anna, Walter, and the shadowy group controlling the town. But the voice's warning wasn't just about discovery, it was a race. Whoever they were closing in. They didn't want the secret unearthed. And if I didn't find that room first, I might not get another chance. That night, I barely slept. The key felt heavier in my pocket, the silence of my apartment oppressive. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to the house. I had to find the hidden room, and I had to survive. Asterisk the night I returned to the Crane house. A thick fog had settled over the town. The moon was just a sliver behind the clouds, barely casting any light. Everything felt shrouded in darkness both outside and within me. I parked farther away this time, not wanting to attract attention. Every step toward the house was weighted with fear and determination. That key in my pocket felt like a lifeline and a noose at the same time. I pushed open the front door, which creaked loudly in the cold silence. The house welcomed me like an old wound, dark, cold, and full of secrets. I grabbed my flashlight and began a systematic search of the rooms I hadn't fully explored before. Floorboards groaned underfoot, and the stale air felt heavy with decades of sorrow. Then, in Walter's old study, I found it. Behind a loose bookshelf panel, there was a narrow door small, nearly hidden in the shadows. The key fit perfectly, with a slow turn and a creak, the door opened. Inside was a cramped room, dust-covered and suffocatingly small. But what lay inside shook me to my core. There were photographs pinned to the walls, photos of children, many missing or unidentified. Among them was a picture of Anna, her eyes staring back at me, filled with sadness and fear. On a small table lay journals, letters, and papers detailing Walter's desperate attempts to expose the group that had taken Anna and corrupted the town. Then I noticed something else, symbols drawn on the floor in faded chalk. Remnants of rituals meant to protect the room or keep something trapped inside. A sudden coldness filled the air, and a whisper echoed in my ear. "You found it." I spun around, but the room was empty. That's when I realized the house wasn't just a building. It was a trap, a prison for secrets and souls, and I was standing right in the middle of it. As I stood in that cramped, secret room, the weight of the past pressed down on me like a physical force. The air grew colder with every breath I took. The faint whispers I'd heard before now swirled around me like a gathering storm, indistinct. Voices calling out, begging, warning. The symbols on the floor seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. My flashlight flickered, casting twisted shadows that danced on the walls. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. Panic surged through me. I tried the doorknob, wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness thickening until it felt almost tangible. I pressed my back against the door, heart racing, trying to steady my breathing. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Not a ghost or spirit, but a man, haggard, wild-eyed, his clothes torn and filthy. He looked like he hadn't seen daylight in years. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "They're coming." I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. "Walter," I whispered. He nodded slowly, then gestured around the room. "This place, it's a prison. They took Anna, they took me, and they'll take anyone who gets too close." The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud. "We're running out of time," he said, eyes darting toward the door. "You have to get out, tell the world. But be careful, this darkness reaches farther than you think." Suddenly, the symbols flared bright for a split second, and the room shook violently. The door rattled, and distant footsteps echoed in the hallway. I grabbed Walter's arm, pulling him toward the door, but the handle still wouldn't turn. Desperation took hold. I pounded on the door, shouting for help, as the shadows closed in. And then, just as the footsteps reached the door, the room went black. When the darkness swallowed me. I felt an overwhelming pressure, suffocating weight pressing from all sides. I thought it was the end, that whatever malevolent force haunted the Crane House had claimed me. But then, suddenly, light pierced through the blackness. I gasped, coughing, and found myself lying on the floor of the house's main hallway. The door to the hidden room was wide open, and Walter, his pale, gaunt face filled with urgency, was gone. I didn't waste a second. Heart pounding, I scrambled out of the house into the cold night air. The fog had lifted, revealing a sky full of stars that felt impossibly distant from the nightmare I'd just escaped. I drove away without looking back, the key still burning in my pocket. In the days that followed, I tried to tell the story too, warn anyone who would listen about the dark undercurrents beneath our town, about the lost children, the corrupted power, and the voices from disconnected numbers. But most people didn't want to hear. The town seemed to close ranks, protect its secrets, and the calls, they stopped. The silence was as loud as the warnings had been. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that whisper in my ear, the voice telling me to run. I don't know if Walter's spirit found peace, or if the darkness still lingers in that house, waiting for the next curious soul. All I know is that some calls are warnings from beyond the grave, and some doors should never be opened.